Alright people, it's been a long 4-month road since the announcement cinematic for Warhammer 3 back in February, and the Bear Boys of the Icy North and the Brutal Boys of the Blood God have been front and center every step of the way. It's time to close the book on Kislev and Khorne for now. That chapter has ended for the moment, and we're on to the next thing. There have been a few hints that Tzeentch and Slaanesh might be up next when it comes to Game 3 reveals, because if you take a look at the end of the Khorne army roster blog, talks about Delights, which of course would pair well with Slaanesh, and Mysteries, which would match up with Tzeentch. But before we get to any of that stuff, the Silence and the Fury is most likely next on the agenda, and I think we'll be getting the full picture for that on Thursday, July 1st, alongside the entirety of the cinematic trailer. After that, it should be a hectic 2 or 3 weeks with the release date on July 14th, and then probably the pre-order race reveal within the month following Torox and Oxyotl. So we might be some time yet before we get to Slaanesh and see the Dark Prince hump Tzeentch into submission in their trailer. First couple of weeks of August at the earliest, I would think, but I guess that's still open for debate. In the meantime, there is a Lord type that should play a massive role in Warhammer 3's campaign that has received zero coverage from CA's end, and in fact didn't even show up in the Khorne army roster, which was a bit of surprise to some people, myself included. That, of course, is the Daemon Prince, whose Lord and Marshal Be'lakor is currently waiting to be unleashed upon the mortal realms. Now, Be'lakor is the only named Daemon Prince of Chaos Undivided of any notable worth. Might be the only one, period. And as we've talked about before, I expect him to lead the Demons of Chaos Undivided faction. Whether we get such a faction immediately or not, I do not know, but I would be flabbergasted, shocked, awed, and quite frankly dismayed if a Demons Undivided race like their 8th edition counterparts does not become a thing at some point, and Be'lakor needs to be the one leading them. But while the Dark Master himself has not been unveiled yet, regular Demon Princes for each of the Chaos Gods haven't even been hinted at so far. Or have they? See, most of the trailers and marketing elements have focused on the tangible force that is Chaos Corruption, that mutant genome of Tzeentch, taking root in our Game 1 Light Wizard, the Black Seeds of Change, coursing through that Boyar in the Khorne vs. Kislev trailer. Yuri is the Daemon Prince, being highlighted in a letter sent to Tsarina Katerin in the announcement cinematic. Even the tagline for Warhammer 3 itself, "Conquer your demons, conquer your demons," implies an internal struggle and a journey to either defeat the evil inside you or to embrace it and let it take you to new heights. The one Chaos feature that people have been talking about since the start of this trilogy is taking a generic or marked Chaos Lord and walking down the path to ascension, to damnation, twisting and morphing their mortal flesh into a form more pleasing to their patron gods, which is ultimately the driving force behind much of the narrative for Chaos in Warhammer Fantasy, that pretty much any mortal working for the Runa's powers wants to ascend to demonhood. It is the greatest gift the Four can bestow on their champions. Being able to take a level 1 scrub-ass random bot, go out into the world, conquer kingdoms, pile high the bodies of the fallen, kill countless asinine mortals, gain the favor of a god, become a harbinger of death, and at the end of this long journey, ascend to demonhood. Now, I think there's an argument to be made here that a feature like this could come in DLC, but at the moment, we know literally nothing about how the campaign will work, what new mechanics are coming, what the features and improvements are that will actually sell this game. And we know that there's something planned on that front. CA's not going to go into this capstone game of the trilogy with nothing to show for it. They're going to have something up their sleeve. And it's not just going to be siege reworks and basic quality of life improvements over Warhammer 1 and Warhammer 2. I mean, faction rosters, legendary lords, flashy new monsters, all that content is very important, but it's not the heart and soul of a Total War experience. And if you're trying to convince people to invest in the final part of this trilogy, you need to go big or go home on the campaign side too. There has to be some hype new features that push the boundaries. You want to talk about a mechanic that everyone can get on board with? Which is saying something considering we whine and complain about just about everything. It's a feature that lets us take the journey from rando Chaos Lord to godlike Demon Prince, where we can give them unique weapons, special rules, gifts of chaos, and custom forge their visuals to our own personal taste. People have been yearning for that kind of customization since day one, essentially. It's why the idea of an army painter is so popular. you can make an army feel like it's yours. There's that special personal connection that you simply can't feel with a prefab legendary lord or a predetermined army color. As soon as real customization becomes an option, like Avatar Conquest and Shogun 2, people become more invested. They feel like they have greater agency. That's a very good element to instill in your player base, something that we've been lacking in this trilogy up to this point. So if we take a look at what a Demon Prince is on the tabletop, we can get a pretty good idea of what their baseline power level will be like in Warhammer 3. They're faster than heavy cav, they're beefy, they're tanky, they hit hard, and they're generally similar to the greater demons of each Chaos God, but kind of like a more well-rounded, jack-of-all-trades, master-of-none type deal in comparison to the Keeper of Secrets, Lord of Change, Great Unclean One, or Bloodthirster that are a bit more specialized than Demon Princes would be. The cool thing, though, the stuff that made Demon Princes really interesting, is that their already highly impressive stat line is just the base form. You can build on top of that foundation in the tabletop and essentially play Pimp My Demon, giving them enchanted items, hell-forged artifacts, breath attacks, the ability to consume souls in melee and regenerate from all the death and destruction they leave in their wake. You can call upon familiars to perch upon their shoulder and aid them in their spellcasting. You can imbue them with acid ichor, causing damage to anyone who attempts to harm them. There are plague flails, axes of Khorne, breath weapons of Tzeentch, scimitars of Slaanesh, wings that grant our demonic champion the gift of flight. A bunch of crazy ass stuff. There are pages and pages of special artifacts and gifts that would completely alter how a Demon Prince approaches combat. So the question is, how would this actually function in campaign? Well, I would very much like to see something akin to a basic version of what we had in Avatar Conquest for Shogun 2 all the way back in 2011. Start out as a normal level 1 Chaos Lord, work your way up to level 25 or 30, the same way you already do in campaign, complete a quest battle, and then be given the choice to ascend to Demonhood. Once that's unlocked, you gain full access to a suite of options in the final part of the skill tree and level system, where you grind your way through 10 more levels up to 40, and unlock all the cool shit that Demon Princes could use in the tabletop. Now, obviously, you'd be tethered to whichever god you started out worshipping. Only Undivided or Slaaneshi Chaos Lords could become a Slaaneshi Demon Prince, and the demonic gifts and weapon choices would be limited to the options that are thematic and logical for each god. So you're not getting Nurgle buffs and abilities on a Demon Prince of Tzeentch. But just to clarify, I'm not talking a paint system here, or even necessarily changing the physical model of the weapons they wield when you look at them. I imagine CA is going to have a hot and ready Demon Prince model for each god, and one for Undivided, whether this comes in the base game or in DLC later down the line. And that's pretty much how they're going to look no matter what. Whatever CA comes up with, that will be their form and function. If you give your Nurgle Demon Prince a Plague Mace, I'm not sure he's going to actually carry one, unless that's the one that he carries as the base model. It'll just be an ability he can activate in battle, and something that changes his base stats. For the same reason that Karl Franz wields Gal Moraz, even before he unlocks the weapon on his skill tree. It's part of his model. You're not going to get around that fact. We're not talking tabletop and swappable kits here. A feature like this would be fairly simple in terms of its implementation and customization options. Many of the things you unlock probably wouldn't visually alter your Demon Prince in any way. Now, I hope I'm wrong on that front. I think we can all get on board with as much visual customization as possible, because I mean, changing their body type, and their wing type, and their fangs, and their color scheme, and the equipment they carry would be amazing. I'm just not sure how realistic that would be, given how reticent CA's been to add an army painter or return to any of those features we had in Shogun 2. So while I absolutely think a Demon Prince feature is a possibility, and in fact might be a probability, and it's certainly something that a lot of us have wanted to see for a long-ass time, if it does end up happening, the customization options aren't going to be so good that they can compete with tabletop. At least that's my initial impression on a feature like this one. And frankly, that might very well be why we aren't getting an army painter in Game 3. It would not shock me in the slightest if Games Workshop put their foot down on this and said, a well-fleshed-out army painter would kind of be stepping on our toes here, CA. Don't do that. We're not cool with you going down that path, because then we're kind of competing with our own stuff. Sure, you can point to Dawn of War and its inclusion there, but these are very different animals. That should be very clear at this point. Total War is going to have almost every single model in tabletop history when this baby has run its course. Dawn of War was never a legit substitute for tabletop, but Total War might be when everything is said and done. So yeah, G-dubs might feel like that having all those crazy good customization options would venture a little bit too far into their domain. But I think this is an opportunity that should not be dismissed offhand. Giving players a more visceral, personal connection to the lords and heroes they use is just a good idea in general, but it's an important part of how Daemon Princes function in the source material. And that long road to damnation plays an important part in the story arcs for many of our favorite characters from Warhammer Fantasy, and in particular, many of the ones we'll be seeing for the first time in Warhammer 3. The more options Creative Assembly adds in creating our very own Daemon Princes, the better Game 3 will be as a whole. Of course, it's very possible this feature ends up being even more simple than what's been discussed thus far, that a Chaos Lord hits a level threshold, ascends, becomes a new type of monster with a different stat line, and that's that. Nothing more to it. No crazy customization. We simply don't know. But one thing is for sure, Daemon Princes are coming, and their inclusion should be an exciting watershed moment in this capstone game of the trilogy.